It's been a while since I've done a movie review, but I have been anticipating this movie since I first heard that it was going to be made because Gladiator is up there for me for one of my favorite films and soundtracks and just all of it. So I was very, very excited to see this film just because it's a movie that I didn't think needed to be made, but it was. So we're here and we're going to talk about it. Gladiator II is once again directed by Ridley Scott, starring Paul Mescal, Pedro Pascal, Denzel Washington, and Joseph Quinn, and some other really phenomenal actors. So this movie follows Lucius, who is forced into becoming a gladiator and is seeking freedom and vengeance, which, yep, sounds just like the first movie. And not only is he seeking freedom for himself, but he is seeking freedom and democracy for all of the people in Rome. Again, yep, sounds just like the first one. For some reason, there are two emperors that have taken over who are just as crazy and maybe crazier than the first, played by Joaquin Phoenix in the first movie. And so just like the first movie, we are following our hero, our protagonist, Paul Mescal, and I personally think that he did a really good job stepping up into this. I feel like it would be really, really hard to follow in the footsteps of Russell Crowe. And while I think nobody can compare to Russell Crowe, I do think that as this character, as Lucius, he played him very well. I think that there was a lot of anger and rage and just so many conflicting thoughts. And I think he portrayed that character to the best of his ability. And I was actually really impressed by it. I think some people might not be, but that may be because they're comparing it to Russell Crowe, which I completely understand. But if this was just a standalone movie, I think he did a phenomenal job. I think the star of the movie was Denzel Washington, though, because his character was so intriguing and you really weren't entirely sure if he was good or if he was bad or what his plans were, what was he doing. I think that he was so fun and entertaining to watch, and like usual, Denzel Washington completely killed this role. I think, though, that the writing of this character, and maybe this is the whole thing overall for the film, the pacing was kind of rushed in certain parts or needed to be expanded upon. But it is a 2.5-hour movie, so I'm sure parts were cut. So in some instances, I just felt like the character in itself was a little rushed. And I think that if there was more development on his part, it would make a lot more sense and it'd feel a lot more put together. But Denzel's character, I felt like, was so fun to watch. He did such a great job, and I think it really added to the story in a sense that it didn't feel like the first movie. So that was appreciated. I think Pedro Pascal did a really good job as well. But again, going back to character development, I feel as though the way that they wrote the story, it just felt really predictable. So while he played the role correctly, it was just kind of flat in that instant. There just wasn't a lot of depth, or the depth of that character was just being rushed because they needed to fill in all of these other things that were going on in the movie. I think overall there were kind of a lot of moving parts to the movie, so they were trying to just fit everything in, but then still follow the same story beats to the first. So it felt as we were watching the first movie, just with different characters that just didn't play it as well. That's honestly what it felt like. That being said, though, it was incredibly entertaining and fun to watch. And I think that, again, if this movie was just a movie by itself, it would be so cool and it would be so fun and it would be a really, really good movie. But it is in the shadow of the first movie. It's so hard to do something different and to take those risks in the right way to make the movie better than the first. And they just didn't nail that with this movie. I think the action scenes are really, really good. And now that there are better technologies to make these grander, entertaining fighting scenes, they definitely worked with that. And they did a good job for the most part. I will say they had a lot of CGI animals, and I know that like in history they reference bringing in different types of animals into these fights and they were trying to be as realistic as possible. the CGI killed it for me, and it seemed way too far-fetched, and I kind of just wish they would have kept it a little more practical in that sense, because then it would have felt more real versus taking me out of the story, because I'm just like, that's not a real shark or that's not a real monkey. But when they did do practical fighting and choreographs, that stuff was excellent, and it was probably the best part of the film. I think my biggest gripe with this film is the fact that there were so many possibilities to take this movie in a completely different direction that did not follow the first film. And I wish that they would have made that risk and really making it its own film, because what they did, I felt, was too safe. They followed the same pattern as the first movie, and it just seemed too predictable, and there wasn't as much heart as the first movie. So because of that, it just didn't make it that great of a movie. I think it's a good movie, but it's not good like the original movie. And unfortunately, it will always be in the shadow of the original movie. I think if they would have focused on different characters and different arcs, maybe it would have been better, or maybe it would have been different. But because it's just the same story with a different person, it just was okay. And also, there was a lot of references to the first movie, including actual scenes. And I wonder if they would have taken those parts out, if that would have made for a stronger film. I feel like a good story shouldn't have to do that. And that's what they had to do. So if I were in the Colosseum and I had to either say yay or nay, I would give this film a thumbs up. I would say that you should definitely see it, unless Gladiator is the best film you've ever seen and you can't watch something else because it'll ruin it, then don't watch it. But I do think it's a really good film. I think that the acting was really well done. Even though the story is very similar, it still was a good story. And I think that it's beautiful, it sounds good, it looks good, and it's really fun. So if you want to see it in theaters, I think that that's a really cool way to see it. But if not, definitely check it out on streaming. But anyway, that is my review. I'm going to leave it here. If you have seen it, what did you think? If you're not going to see it, tell me why you're not going to see it. If you guys liked this video, please give me a like. And if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. If not, enjoy your day anyway, and I will see you guys later.